Hi, Assalamu alaykum everyone, and welcome to the third chapter. In this chapter, we are going to learn about risk assessment and risk management. Okay, in this chapter, it is further divided into two categories, which risk assessment and risk measurement. So in this class, we are focusing on the first topic, which is risk assessment. So the first part is introduction to risk assessment, which focusing on the risk identification. This is the overview of the chapter. The first one, we will look on the technique in risk identification, human assessment of risk, actual and perceived risk, sources of risk, and in the second part we are focusing on the introduction of risk management, which includes technique in risk management, technique of collecting and presenting risk data, statistical measures of risk data and probabilities, and the last one is probability distribution. So there are several techniques in risk identification, namely physical inspection, checklist, flowchart, hazard, and the last one, fault trees. Okay, we will look on the first one, which is physical inspection. Physical inspection of premises and plants or process. So this is where you need to walk down into the premise and make a direct observation. You need to look by your own self and you need to inspect the premises, the building, the plant, and also the process involved in preparing the product and whatnot. So this is one of the common method, which is time consuming because you need to check and look by your own self from one building to another building, from one process to another process, and you need to do some preparatory work. Preparatory works includes where you need to know about organization, where are you going to go, what are you need to do while you are going for the physical inspection. So it is important for you to prepare before you do the physical inspection. Okay, you need to know where do you need to go. Let's say the factory is too big. Okay, so you need to focus on a certain building first before um, you go to somewhere else. For example, UiTM, so we have this HEA, HEP, so you need to know all the places in UiTM before you can do the physical inspection. We doesn't want you to miss one of this building for the inspection. And how about the process? For UiTM itself, we have a lot of process that you need to know. For example, students newly intake. So we need to know what are the process for the student enrollment, and we need to look one by making the physical inspection. And the second one is checklist. Okay, it is a pro forma or a form which is sent to the site for completion by someone there. So this is a bit easy as compared to physical inspection, where you doesn't have to go to the factory to make your own inspection. You just prepare a form that we call it checklist and send it to someone, for example like a supervisor in the factory, to do some checking on your behalf. So this activity is more quick, involve low cost, very effective, and it can be easily adopted to any changes. But under checklist, you also need to prepare some work before the checklist method can be applied. This is why you need to prepare the checklist ataupun the pro forma for the supervisor at site to complete it on your behalf. And the third one is flowchart. So flowchart is more detailed form of risk identification. It shows the stages in the process or the operation of the factory itself or the operation on how to make finished good. So it involves detailed analysis and also qualitative method of analysis. Flowchart are more or less are referring to the standard operating procedure of a company or the factory. So it involves details of activity or tasks that need to be done by the staff according to the SOP. So if the staff is not following the SOP, uh, there will be some defect on the product itself, or it can bring harm to the product ataupun loss to the company. So how you can detect or how you can identify risk from the flowchart or the standard operating procedure. So this is where you need to study the procedure. So from one step to another step, what is the existing and potential risk that might happen to your staff, the company itself, and also to the product itself. So that is how you look at the flowchart and try to identify the risk. And the fourth one is hazard, or we call it hazard and operability studies. So this is one of the detailed process for the identification of risk. Therefore, hazard involves detailed examination of a plan or process which used extensively in a process industry. So normally for a factory which involves a lot of department and a lot of process, they will use this hazard in order to identify existing and potential risks. This is because when the risk manager adopting hazard ataupun hazard and operability studies, they will identify the risk in very detail, so that there is no single risk overlooked by the risk manager. Okay, this is very important, because when we need to develop ataupun to invent ataupun to create a very detailed product, a single mistake can bring harm to the product itself, and therefore it can bring loss to the factory or the company. Okay, if the cost to prepare one product is very expensive, so detailed examination needs to be conducted to make sure every finished product can be marketed ataupun can be sold to the end user, and therefore the company will not experience any profit. So extreme detail examination and a very comprehensive examination will be used by the retail manager, and in this case the person involving in these studies need to be a person who have a good knowledge, a good experience in terms of risk identification. Okay, so that is why when they want to perform hazard studies, it consists of people from different background, for example like engineers, risk manager, and many more. Okay, next one is fault trees. Fault trees is one of the structured approach for risk identification, and this is one of the excellent way in reducing complicated event, and it gives some structure to the identification at all of the possible risky event. So if you can see from the example provided in the textbook, this is example of fault trees. Okay, the situation given here where a person cannot start his car engine in the morning. So you will need to list down the possible reason for that faulty engines. So you list down here. Okay, it must be due to no petrol, battery flat, electrical fault, ataupun loss of key. So you need to list it down on the horizontal way, and then you need to identify subsidiary reason for that. For example here, battery flat. And what is the reason for battery flat? Maybe due to the cold weather, and also battery needs changing. Okay, so this is fault trees. Okay, you list down um, the reason for the problems. Okay, for example, when you one of your problem is you cannot come to my class today, so what are the possible reason for that? So you need to list down all your possible reason. Maybe due to the weather, due to the health condition, um, apa ni your alarm is not working, so you list down. And if you have further reason, we call it subsidiary reason, you can place it on the bottom. Kan, let's say apa ni, health problem. Sebab apa? Kan, due to cold weather ataupun not having enough sleep. Kan, so from this you can identify the main reason that resulted to that problem. Okay, so in this case, this person have identified the problem. So the main problem why the engine cannot be started is due to battery flat ataupun flat battery. So why the battery flat? This is because of the cold weather, and also the battery needs changing. So this is how you identify risk, adopting the fault tree technique. Okay, so this is one of the common features of risk identification. Okay, so risk identification is very important. It must be given as a top priority for a company or individual. So it's very important for you to identify the potential risk or any current risk that you will be exposed with, because this is where you want to avoid injury, we want to avoid future losses. Okay, so we need to make sure that we can live in the safe place, and also we need not to mention about our physical condition of ourselves, but also our financial condition. So we need to make sure both in a great situation. The second one, there is multiple risk identification techniques available that you can use. Okay, in the second chapter we have 10. Okay, and in the third chapter we have highlighted several technique as well. So use any identification technique that might suit with your personality and your capacity and your capability. So if something that suit yourself and you can work for it, so it will be easier for you to identify the risk. And then you need to know that risk identification is a continuous effort. Okay, it is not one job punya apa work. Okay, you need to continuously look around you. Kan, for example at your house, kan, from time to time you need to check your physical hazard in your house. Kan, at your workplace you need to look back on your apa ni, workmanship, your job flow, your procedure and whatnot. Yeah, because a risk is evolving. Okay, there will be new risks coming in to your company, to your house, can based on the situation and the environment. Next one, efficient record management is very essential. You need to have documented process. You need to have documented technique ataupun process that you have taken for your risk identification and whatnot. Okay, not limited to that, it requires cooperation from various departments, because this is not a one-person job. Okay, this is not the risk manager's only job, so it requires cooperation from all the staff, because you as a risk manager, you need to monitor and you need to give instruction to the employees to report ataupun to tell you any potential ataupun existing risk that might happen to them, because they are the employees who doing the job and they experience any risk ataupun they might um, able to identify any potential risk because they do the job, can not you. Okay, you can just look at them and you sometimes very you you will have some difficulties to understand their job them sometimes. And then risk identification also consume monetary cost. Yes, it involves a lot of cost. In fact, um, in order to protect yourself against risk, it requires some expenses as well. And the last one, demand a common sense and imagination plus detailed assessment. Okay, so you need to be able to think to step ahead and try to imagine, okay, what if this kind of thing happen, what if this risk happen to you and your company. Okay, so that is why you need to have a detailed assessment so that you can reduce the risk, uh, you can avoid the risk or you can mitigate the risk from happening to yourself and also to your company. Next one, we will proceed with the human assessment of risk. There are four types of assessment for human risk. The first one is personal, medical, political, and business. Human assessment of risk can be assessed in terms of its personnel itself. Okay, the first one, regarding the individual, where they always involve in making a choice. Okay, for example, a choice of career. Okay, a choice of taking suitable degree courses. Okay, ataupun a choice of selecting future wife or husband. So in our, as a person, okay, as an individual, so every day we are facing to a risk. So we need to make a choice, okay, in our life every day. It involving making apa ni, choices in our life, kan, macam tadi lah contoh kan, to eat or not to eat, okay, to sleep or not, kan. We make choices, and some of the choice will result you to the bad condition or situation, and some choice will make you in a better position. Okay, so when you make a choice, you want to skip breakfast for the day, kan, it will given you a certain risk, kan, risk of stomach ache, falling sick dan sebagainya. As compared if you make a choice to eat for breakfast, it will leave you in a good condition. Okay, you have the energy, you are not exposed to apa ni, disease, you can focus in your class dan sebagainya. So that is the risk that faced by a human being when you um, making a wrong choice in your life. Okay, the second one is a medical risk. Okay, so this is where the doctors and nurses and the surgeon face uncertainties. Okay, they need to make a choice as well. Okay, medical staff, doctors, they need to make choice whether to operate you, the patient, or not, ataupun to use medicine A or medicine B. Okay, when a person falls sick and they come to you, so you as a doctor, you need to examine the patient. Okay, so when you find out that this person has a serious disease, okay, so you need to make decision whether to operate or not. Okay, and if this person suffer from flu, kan, what kind of flu medicine you want to give to this patient, kan. If you are making wrong choices, kan, as a doctor, um, if you are giving wrong medicine to your patient, so there is certain risk will happen. Okay, the patient will get more sick ataupun it may cause death to that particular patient. Huh? And the third one is political. Okay, in term of political, for example, in textbook, at the end of 1980s, we saw the great risk which many individuals took in demonstrating for democracy. Kan in 1980s, we make a decision whether we want to have this democracy nation ataupun sebaliknya. So we need to make decision kan whether we want to form a democracy nation, autocracy or theocracy nation. So in 1980, so we have based on the voting and whatnot. So we have choose that Malaysia should be a democracy country. So this is what we have right now, and every 5 years we make a voting. So if you are wrongly making decision ataupun if Malaysia become autocracy or theocracy, so it also can bring a certain level of risk. Okay, basically all this kind of apa ni uh, democracy ke autocracy ke theocracy ke, it give a certain level of risk to the citizen itself. Okay, so it is how we manage and assess the risk. Okay, so if the risk regarding democracy country is very high, so normally we are not running into this democracy nation. We will look for other apa ni method lah. And the last one is business. Okay, in business world nowadays, okay, we are always work on the basis of risk and also uncertainty. Okay, um, when you have money, you can make a choice whether you want to just invest your money with the bank or in any financial institution, ataupun you want to start up a new business. Okay, so there is a choice that you need to make. If you just invest your money with the bank and any financial institutions, they will guarantee you your principal and also return from the investment. But if you choose to apa ni develop ataupun to start up your own business, ada juga risiko, risk that you might fail with your business, people are not buying your goods and whatnot, so at the end your business fail and you experience bankruptcy. Same goes to the investment in a bank. Even though bank guarantee your principal and also return from the investment, there is possibility of bank making wrong investment decisions and also will experience bankruptcy. So it is up to you to assess which one of these can bring more ataupun can reduce your risk, okay, regarding of business. Okay, just now we look on the human assessment of risk, and the second one we will look on the actual and perceived risk. Now let's see the differences between absolute, real and perceived risk. Absolute risk is the uppermost limit if the risk inherent in a situation. Okay, so this is the highest level of risk which happen to you. It will give a great apa ni great impact to yourself and your financial condition. So this is where when there is no safety control present. For example, when you driving a car without having a brake, so this is where you are exposed to absolute risk because there is no safety control present when you driving the car. And the second one is real risk, so the amount of risk which actually exists at a given moment in time. So this is where absolute risk adjusted by safety control. So when you are driving a car that equipped with some of the safety equipment, namely the brake, safety belt an airbag. So this is what we call the real risk. So you are driving the car with real risk. Okay. um, yes, driving a car, traveling by a car, can you are exposed to level a certain level of certain risk, kind of risk of accident and whatnot. So when you drive a car equipped with the safety equipment, so you are facing real risk kan. But if you are driving a car without any safety equipment, tak ada seat belt, no airbag, no brake itself, so you are exposing to the absolute risk. And the last one is perceived risk, an individual subjective assessment of the real risk present at any time. So this is a person perception on the risk. It can be absolute, it can be a real risk, because a person perception to a risk is different among each other. Can some people see that uh, building a house near to the beach is safe, okay, and fun, but some people think that building a house near to the beach is very dangerous because you are exposed to a lot of risks. Okay, risk of natural disaster like tsunami ke kan dan sebagainya. So that is the perceived risk because it depends on the individual assessment of risk itself. In next one, actual and perceived risk is further divided into four types. Okay, the first one we have familiarity, the second one is control, personal or societal effect, and the last one is frequency and severity. The first risk perception factors is familiarity level. Okay, so risk awareness of uncertain event, so based on personal experience, media and prior knowledge, or easy to recall. So when a person is very familiar on something, okay, this person tend to understate the real level of risk. But when a person are too exposed to a certain things, okay, certain event, this person normally will overstate the real level of risk. For example, if you are too familiar of something, you will understate level of risk. Okay, when you are too familiar, for example, you are very familiar with the road, okay, the road condition from your ITM to your house, okay, even though it is very narrow and dark, when you're driving at night, you're still driving so fast because you are too familiar with the road, and therefore you are driving so fast at during the night time because you understate the real level of risk. Okay, because you are too familiar. Okay, so you feel that it is safe for you to drive very late at night and drive very fast to reach your destination. Okay, but the real one is it is very dangerous for you to drive at night very fast and driving in a narrow road, can, because there is a possibility, the risk that you might involve in accident. Okay, and the second one, if you are unfamiliar with a certain things, you will normally overstate the level of risk. And in fact, nowadays people are very easy to be influenced by the media and whatnot. Can, for example, so okay, for example, if you unfamiliar with bungee jumping, okay, you will normally overstate the level of risk. Okay, bungee jumping from 50 meters above the ground with all precautionary action taken kan by the operator, kan dia dah sediakan harness, safety, bawah ada jaring, kan you just jump and enjoy the experience. But some people say that they are too afraid to try the bungee jumping activity because it have been viewed kan dekat social media dan sebagainya, people die from the activity, um, and whatnot. So people tend to overstate the level of risk kan. Sebenarnya the activities is very safe because all the precautionary action ataupun measures have been taken to make sure you can enjoy the activity in the safest condition kan. So that is why people tend to overstate the level of risk because they are not familiar with that event. Okay, therefore familiarity level will influence people perception on risk. The second one is control. Okay, the level of control that individual have to prevent or mitigate the risk. So when a person have a certain control on the event or things, so they normally understate the real level of risk. But if the person do not have any control on the event or things, they tend to overestimate the real level of risk. Okay, for example, people are afraid traveling by the aircraft or aeroplane as compared to the car. Okay, why people afraid traveling by airplane? So because they do not have control over the plane. Okay, because they are not driving the aircraft, so when they cannot have the control of that situation, so they tend to overestimate level of risk. In the real life we can see that 1/1000 accident happen between the airplane and car crash. Okay, dalam 1000 car crash happened, only one plane will got crash. So this is what happened when you do not have control over the situation. But if you have a great control over the situation kan, for example when you are driving a car, you have overconfident because you have driving car so long kan, ataupun you have experience driving the car, you have so much confidence driving the car in the very fast kan, very fast. So therefore you understand the real level of risk because you feel that you are the experienced driver, you always driving fast. Okay, therefore you understand real level of risk that you feel you are not involved, you will not get into any accidents because you have the control with you. Tapi if something beyond your control ataupun you cannot control certain things, you might overstate the real level of risk. Okay, the next one we have this personal and societal effect. So the public's perception of the risk itself. Okay, societal referring to the public ataupun the society. Okay, and the personal attitude also referring to an individual. It depends on your personal attitude in correspondent toward a certain risk. Okay, so this kind of think ataupun attitude occur in yourself, okay, you will say that who cares, it won't happen to me syndrome. For example, like vaccination. Okay, suntikan vaksin. Okay, you are so afraid to be jabbed with the vaccine because you know about vaccine, right? They will apa ni, inject all the good bacteria in your body. So all these good bacteria will play its role to fight the bad bacteria. Kan? So when we talk about bacteria, you always associate with the bad things, but bacteria is not always bad. Some of the bacteria is good and it will help you to fight another bacteria. So in this case, you refuse the vaccine injection to your body. Okay, so this is where you understate the level of risk to the society. Okay, society takkan kena penyakit if you are not taking the injection kan from the doctors. So this is what happened. Okay, so the real one, if you are not taking the vaccine, it will give bad effect to the society. It will be riskier for the society to have you in the community. Okay, so that is what does it mean by personal and societal effect. And the last one is frequency and severity. Okay, this is where discrimination happen between the probability of an event and the severity. For example, when the government want to build up a nuclear plant in Malaysia. Okay, when we talk about nuclear plant, there is low probability that the nuclear plant will be exploded. Okay, um, but once it's explode, it will give high impact to the environment and the place around the nuclear plant. So this is where the development of nuclear plant involve low frequency but high severity. But in this case, the society look in different way. Okay, the society pay much concern on the severity rather than frequency. Supposedly, the society need to look on the frequency instead of severity. Okay, so the society objected, yeah, the government plan to build the nuclear plant in Malaysia because they are concerned on the impact, okay, bad impact of the nuclear plant in Malaysia, kan. But in real life, the possibility of the nuclear plant to leak ataupun explode is very minimal. So people tend to overestimate the real level of risks. This is because they do not know about the nuclear plant itself. Okay, but if a person ataupun the society know about the nuclear plant and the Japan experience on handling this nuclear plant, they will understate the level of risk somehow. Okay, so it basically very important for the society, for individual and the government to know about the event or the thing that they want to produce or develop, so that the possibility of perception where people understate or overestimate the risk can be overcome. Next one, we will learn about the various sources of risk. So where does this risk come from? So if you can see here, we have several sources of risk, namely physical environment, social environment, political environment, and the last one is cognitive environment. The first one is physical environment. So when we talk about physical environment, it involves ataupun it is one of the fundamental sources of risk. Okay, for example, like earthquake, excessive rainfall, landslide, and many more. Okay, it relates with the natural disaster. Okay, not limited to that. Physical environment also comprise all the different factors, including the nature, the trees, the lake, the ocean, all these kind of things also is the sources of risk. Okay, the lake, the ocean can become a great risk to the human being, kan. The risk of loss, flood, drone, sinking of the a boat or a ship. Okay, so that is why all this physical environment can bring harm to the human being. Even the trees also is a risk to the human being. It might fall down and fall into you. The second one is social environment. Okay, this includes the living condition and the working condition of a person. Okay, not limited to that. It also involves a person income level, their education background, and also the community or the society that he live in. Okay, so all of these factors has a great effect to your health. Okay, for example, different social environment happen in the Europe, have contributed the wide disparities of health. People who have high income will have a great health condition as compared to the people with low income. Okay, so there is a big gaps in terms of life expectancy. Okay, people with a great income, with a good education, living in a great community, they have a good lifespan as compared to the people who have a problem with their income, living in the uh, unhealthy society. So dia punya lifespan, umur dia tak panjang. Okay, so this is the factors that affect social. This is a social environment that affect a human being. Next one is political environment. The current political situation and the politic uncertainty also give a great risk or impact to the company's operation. So when there is political uncertainty, it will give a bad image of Malaysia, and it brings to the uncertainty of the economy. So it will be very difficult to attract foreign direct investment and also local investment to invest in your company due to political uncertainty. In fact, the changes of Prime Minister also might give a very dramatic effect on the organizations, the company policy, and the current policy of the government. And any changes of policy also can affect the company's operation in a good or in a bad way. Next one of the sources of risk come from the legal environment. Any new law or new enforcement will affect companies' operation and profitability. So if the company fails or refuse to follow any rules and regulations, so their product will be rejected uh, from a certain countries when it involving international trade. For example, if your crops have a high density of poison, so your product cannot be entering a certain country, for example like Singapore, they will reject your product and you will experience losses. Another example, in terms of the packaging regulation of a certain country, in Malaysia itself, we require the packaging to mention on the ingredients, on the nutritional fact of the food itself. So if any uh, foreign company who want to export their goods to Malaysia and fails to comply with this condition ataupun this regulation, we have the right to not accepting their product to be sold at Malaysia. So that is the risk that coming from legal environment. So standard conduct also have been taken, and punishment also can be taken by the government to all the companies or any individual who fail to follow the rules and regulation which have been enforced by the government. Okay, next one we have this what we call operational environment. Okay, so this is a risk associated with the operation environment of the factory or the company. Okay, uh, it involves the circumstances, the current process surrounding the workplace area. For example, dust, high temperature, vibrations is one of the risks to the machine ataupun computers. Okay, so if you fail to make sure the operational place of your factory works with less dust, okay, in a cold temperature and which in a less vibration, so basically you will make the machinery uh, broken, and therefore it will be very costly for the company to fix or even to buy a new machine. So will stop the company to achieve their mission due to this loss. Next one is economic environment. Okay, economic situation, for example in Malaysia also can give great risk or impact to a company or to individual. Okay, a system, policy and the nature of economy are changing along the way, and it is very dynamic and complex in nature. Therefore, the economic situation like economic downturns, okay, level of income, level of unemployment, so this will give a great impact to the business. Okay, if the level of unemployment is very high, this is not good for the economy, because the economy will shrinking as well, because when people do not have job, they do not have income. So when they do not have money, they are very calculative, or they cannot spend money to buy goods. When a company doesn't have any customer, so it will give a great impact for their profitability, and at the end the company will fall and bankrupt. And the last one we have this cognitive environment. So this is where the environment happen to be the employees of the companies have lack of knowledge, lack of experience to see, to measure the risk in a good manner. Okay, so when a company have a risk manager who doesn't have the good ability to understand to see the risk, so it will give a great impact to the company itself. Okay, as a risk manager, he cannot miss ataupun he cannot overlook any kind of existing or potential risk that might happen to a company. Okay, so it is very important for the risk manager to have a good knowledge, good experience, so that risks that happen will not affect them in a great way. Okay, if any kind of risk happen to them, it still can be managed, ataupun the risk itself is not too great for the company, and therefore it will not resulted to great loss ataupun bankruptcy to the company itself. Okay, next one we will look on the categories of risk exposure. So we have 4 here: physical asset, financial asset, liability and human asset. Okay, the first one, you have this physical asset exposure. For every person who owns an asset, there are certain risk exposure on your asset. Okay, so that is why ownership of property given rise to possible gain or losses. Okay, if you have an asset, for example like house ke, your laptop ke, or anything that you can see as an asset, it will give you it will comes to you with a certain level of risk. Kan, there is possibility of gain and losses from your ownership of on that particular asset. For example, a house, a property may be damaged. Kan, a house may be destroyed as well, ataupun lost or diminished in terms of its value. For example, if you consider your asset, your phone as your asset, so there is possibility um, of your phone to be damaged, kan, lost ataupun destroyed, ataupun the value will be diminished because of the usage itself. Okay, next one is financial asset exposure. If you do have financial asset, you will experience this risk exposure. For example, financial asset referring to your ownership on the securities, any investment in stock market, bond and mortgage. So that is what we call financial asset. Okay, so what kind of exposure you will experience loss or gain on your financial asset. If you make your investment and the investment performing very well, so you will experience gain ataupun dividend profit from the investment. If the money that you invest is and the bank is not making the right investment decision, so there is possibility of you experience losses from your investment. Okay, next one is liability exposure. Okay, everyone come with ataupun everyone have this exposure. We call it liability exposure. Why? As a good Malaysian, as a good citizen of nation, we are obliged to follow a certain rules and regulation or even the law in Malaysia. So dekat Malaysia ni we have this civil law ataupun criminal law and a lot of law basically. So if we are not following the law or regulation by the government, so there is a possibility of you getting sued ataupun to be sued or arrested by the police from not for not following the law, kan, when you involve yourself in criminal activities lah, mencuri ke, merompak ke, memperkosa ke, that kind of thing against the law, so you will be arrested by the police, kan, and then you need to undergo the ni lah, imprisonment dan sebagainya. And the last one, human asset exposure. Okay, human asset exposure is referring to yourself, kan. You need to consider yourself as an asset, so that is why we call it as human asset. So therefore, as a human, there are certain risk exposure to yourself. Okay, a part of the wealth of organization arises from its investment in human. Okay, so human is an asset for a company. Ataupun the employees is the company consider human being as an asset for them. So this is the key employees that are able to make sure that the company able to achieve its mission and to generate profit to the company. So there is possibility of a company losing all these key employees due to the injury or death of the manager, the employees and even the stakeholder of that company. So when one of the key employees happen to have injury ataupun mati, death, so it will give a great impact to the company, where company need to look for new staff. They need to train them to make sure that this person able to work similar like the previous staff who have disease. Okay, so when the key employees die ataupun look for another job not in your company, so you will experience a great loss kan, because that you need sometimes in order to find a great person, in order to train that person. So in between that time kan, you are not able to maximize your profit. So that is the end of the first part on chapter 3. Okay, for the second part on chapter 3 we'll continue later. I hope if you have any question, you can write it down on the comment section below, and don't forget to follow my YouTube channel and click at the notification level down there. See you later next time. Assalamu alaikum.